and then we'll do the translations and the purport. Text 28 to 29. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So here we'll go ahead and read. Gita Vesashkrita Buddha Udyayam Tam Anusmaran Samrambha Bhayayogena Vindate Tat Swarupatam Evam Krishne Bhagavati Maya Manuja Ishwari Vairena Buddha Padmanas Ramapur Anuchintaya. Anybody like to try to chant the verse?
Gita pe Shanskrita Rudha Rudiyayam Tam Anusmaran Samrambha Bhaya Yogena Vindate Tat Swarupatam Evam Krishne Bhagavati Maya Manuja Ishvare Vairena Bhuta Atmanas Tam Apur Anuchintaya.
Right. So we'll do word for word. Gita, the grass word. Veshaskrita, by a bee. Ruda, confined. Udyayam, in a hole in a wall. That bee, like a bzzz, a bee. Anusmaran, thinking of. Samrambha Bhaya Yogena, through intense fear and enmity. Vindate, attains. Of that, of that being. Swarupatam, the same form. Evam, thus. Krishna, in Krishna. Bhagavati, the personality of Godhead. Mayam J, who appeared by his own energy in his eternal human-like form. Ishvare, the supreme. Vairena, by enmity. Uttapapmana, those purified of sins. Him. Apu, attained. Anuchintaya, by thinking of. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 4:10, the Lord says, Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha Mam Maya Mam Man Maya Mam Upashrita Bhavo Jnanatapasa Uttamad Bhavam Agata. Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me, and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past become purified by knowledge of me. And thus they all attained transcendental love for me. There are two ways of constantly thinking of Krishna: as a devotee and as an enemy. A devotee, of course, by his knowledge and tapasya, becomes free from fear and anger and becomes a pure devotee. Similarly, an enemy, although thinking of Krishna inimically, thinks of him constantly and also becomes purified. This is confirmed elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita 9:30, where the Lord says, Apiche sudaracharo bhajate mam ananyavak sadhureva samantavya samyak vyavasito visaha. Even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he engages in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. A devotee undoubtedly worships the Lord with rapt attention. Similarly, if an enemy, Sudurachara, always thinks of Krishna, he also becomes a purified devotee. The example given here concerns the grassworm that becomes bee-like because of constantly thinking of the bee that forces it to enter a hole. But by always thinking of the bee in fear, the grassworm starts to become a bee. This is a practical example. Lord Krishna appears within this material world for two purposes: Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam, to protect the devotees and annihilate the demons. The sadhus and devotees certainly think of the Lord always, but duskritis, the demons, like Kamsa and Shishupal, also think of Krishna in terms of killing him. By thinking of Krishna, both the demons and devotees attain liberation from the clutches of material Maya. This verse uses the word Maya Manuje. When Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in his original spiritual potency, Sambhavamya Mamaya, he is not forced to accept a form made by material nature. Therefore, the Lord is addressed as Ishvara, the controller of Maya. He is not controlled by Maya. When a demon continuously thinks of Krishna because of his enmity toward him, he is certainly free from the sinful reactions of his life. To think of Krishna in any way, in terms of his name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, or anything pertaining to him, is beneficial for everyone. Shrinatam Swagata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana. Thinking of Krishna, hearing the holy name of Krishna, or hearing the pastimes of Krishna, will make one pure, and then he will become a devotee. Our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore trying to introduce the system of somehow or other, letting everyone hear the holy name of Krishna, gradually become a devotee, and his life will be successful. Okay. Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadavayam Tadati Swavadantikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hi. Happy to be here, and Hare Krishna to all the devotees online. I was still trying to connect on the computer because my phone is low battery here. So please forgive me if it gets cut short. I'll also try to keep the class short, and if it does cut off, you Prabhus are welcome to continue the discussion. So I had a few things that came to mind as I was reading this. And I was also thinking of the report from yesterday. First thing was, I've never actually witnessed how the grass worm goes in the hole. I had no idea such a thing existed.
I don't think I have seen that.
I don't know, have any of you Prabhus ever witnessed that, a grass worm taking on the bee-like qualities?
I have witnessed countless times carpenter bees will pick up small worms and grubs, and they carry them into holes that they dig into wooden posts and trees and even wooden siding of houses. They capture them and seal them in the hole to serve as food for their young. They lay eggs beside the worms.
Oh, wow. Thank you for that, Prabhu. So yes, this is the example being given here. Even though it's with fear and enmity, still they end up servicing and having those baby-like qualities. So I just amazed at the merciful nature of the Lord. And hearing from His Holiness Devamrita Maharaj talking about the reasons why the Lord appears. And one of the main ones is mercy. And I kept thinking to myself, how is it mercy in terms of material creation and all the suffering that's going on? And then seeing here how understanding that Krishna has nothing to do with Maya in terms of being under Maya's control. So his personality, first of all, is completely spiritual. He's the supreme source of everything. Yet in that personality, he has these emotions. And one of his qualities is that he has a lot of love and compassion. And one aspect of compassion is taking out all the demons. So finding ways of, where he allows the demons to do their thing so that ultimately they can take each other out. That was also a little bit hard for me to wrap my head around, but understanding the nature of the demoniac personalities, it's better that they're gone, because then those that are innocent and devotees, they can practice and make advancement in spiritual life. So thinking of Krishna, thinking of his pastimes, thinking of his paraphernalia, his form, his holy name, all of these are ways in which we can remember Krishna and become purified by his association. And the same applies for those who are of demoniac nature. And there are different grades of demons. As we hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, that in previous ages, the demons and demigods were situated in complete different, families and planets. And as time progressed, they, both demigods and demons appearing in the same family. You have Kashyapa Muni. He has his sons who are both demons and demigods. And in Kali Yuga, we have personalities that have both traits, both demoniac propensities and divine propensities. So Krishna is so kind that he arranges us to come to this material creation to, so-called enjoy. And of course, we're given an opportunity while trying to enjoy to learn and become again reinstated in our position as devotees. So this is the kindness of the Lord. And it's just, we think of big demons, how, why is it that they would also be benefited? And that's the power of Krishna, that he's beyond these dualities. So therefore, anyone who associates with him also becomes free of these dualities. And of course, in Nectar Devotion, we do hear that it's recommended for devotees to meditate on Krishna intensely in a favorable way. We shouldn't take our chances of meditating on Krishna in enmity. And we do know from Srimad Bhagavatam that some of these great demons are devotees in the spiritual world, and in order to help assist in giving Krishna pleasure, they appear as demons to fight with Krishna. So because Krishna also enjoys fighting. So yeah, they're not ordinary, even these big demons. And so yeah, those were a few thoughts as far as the demons and the demigods, and there's some other really nice points being made here in the report. Of course, here Prabhupada is going to the extent of quoting Bhagavad Gita 9:30 about how even if one commits abominable actions, they're considered saintly if they're engaged in devotional service, because then they become properly situated by engaging in that devotional service. And I've always thought of this in reference to fall downs, of when practicing devotee is trying to do devotional service and has some kind of fall down, some kind of slip up in their practice. They break one of the principles, or they go away for some time due to their temporary attraction to some old habits. But then they, continue, and then they come back and continue to practice their devotional service. That's generally my reference of thought in terms of this verse. And here, Prabhupada has given a broader perspective for me to see that it applies in perspective to those that we would normally consider inimical towards Krishna, by their nature and influence of being under, Maya, that they become either angry or fearful, like that towards Krishna. So even such personalities, if they're given devotional service, they also will become purified. And this is a big lesson, because as someone like myself aspiring to become a devotee, I can see that even within my own heart, there is so much fear and enmity and anger and all these things. Of course, my false ego tells me like it's because of this reason or that person, and it's not necessarily toward Krishna, but it's all Krishna's, this is all Krishna's creation. And so having any of those feelings that are not directly in devotional service, of course, for an advanced pure soul, all the emotions are completely purified, and all of the emotions are enacted out of a mood to give Krishna pleasure. But in my case, which is the case of many other people in this world, it's more out of the misconception that I am the body, I am my mind, I am, obligated and, attached to those things in relation to my body. So yeah, the insecurities and the many things which create a hardness in the heart. There's a very subtle sense of anger and enmity, and that's shown, I can see in my own self, by different attitudes that I may carry or different actions that I may have. And then I go back and I introspect and I think, where did that come from? But then when I'm chanting and I'm trying to focus on the holy name of Krishna, a lot of times my mind wants to go somewhere else, or I start thinking of other things. And when I really try to break through that, it really comes down to the fact that my heart is very hard and it's not open to Krishna, because Krishna is so gentle and so loving and so sweet, and he wants to be there. He wants to give himself, but somehow or other, due to the conditioning of material nature and my misidentification with it for so long, it's an intense habit. But the power of the holy name is, as we hear in the Shikshastakam, which are one of the first 8 prayers given by Lord Chaitanya, is that when you chant, one of the first symptoms is described like the rising sun. It gives light to the consciousness. And then by having light, you can see everything else. And also the encouraging part of that is to know that all these misplacements of my consciousness, they're not actually me. They're things that I've associated with, and therefore I've identified with them and held on to them. So Krishna is so kind that by his association, by the grace of the spiritual master and the devotees, by staying in that constant association, whether it be like that, chanting, doing some service, taking prasadam, which is like the easiest thing in the world. Who does not like taking prasadam? I mean, I remember being in Atlanta and running the vegan restaurant, and then also being in California and helping in the Govinda's restaurant there. So many people come in, they have no idea about Krishna, but they taste the food and they immediately have some experience according to their level, but they have some experience which they genuinely appreciate. And that slight bit of appreciation, it builds and it builds and it builds. And I remember being in the restaurant. I probably said it before, but I'll say it again. And there was one customer, because the Govindas in LA had been open for many years now. When I was there, it was already open for 20 something years. And apparently this one gentleman, he had been going there since it opened. And he would go maybe 2-3 times a week for lunch and for dinner. And he came to the register because I was doing the register. And he said, I've been coming here a long time. He said, what do you guys exactly do? And he was like, are you guys praying to God? And what's so special about the food? What do you guys do with the food? So like that, it was a breakthrough for him. And it was really amazing to witness that it took him quite some time to even come to the point to question what's going on. But the fact that it did happen, and there are other cases of another person like that. They ask questions after some time coming along, taking prasadam, and being in Atlanta, there are a lot of people who would come in very favorable. There were a few very strong, born again Christians that would come in, and you could kind of sense their uneasiness about, because we would have we weren't like so in everybody's face that we were devotees, but we were pretty obvious in terms of displaying the books, and we had, of course, the changing bodies diagram, and a few pictures of Krishna and Prabhupada here and there. So sometimes they'd come in and they would order, and they would sit and eat and take prasadam, and then they would call me over and say, "Can we ask you a few questions? And what is this? And what is that?" And like that. And as much as possible, I would try my best to leave the positive impressions about Krishna consciousness, how we're just trying to help people, trying to serve people with food, be there for persons who are, struggling in their lives and trying to assist them in some way. So in very general ways, I was trying to tell them what we're doing, and they would appreciate, and some wouldn't. Some would come in and they'd be so disturbed just at the sight of Krishna, they would come in and walk away. They wouldn't even order food. But it was very rare. It was a very rare few. But even then, just the fact that they even went there, and they even stepped in the facility where the Lord is a big step. So like that, everyone's on different levels, but Krishna has different ways of getting the souls to somehow or other come in touch and engage in some sort of devotional service. And here Prabhupada is again in the purport, giving us the two reasons why he appears in that consciousness of understanding his mercy. He comes to protect the devotees and to annihilate the demons. And so having this distinction between devotees and demons is important, especially for a beginning practicing devotee. For a pure devotee, he sees everyone else as a devotee, and he feels that he can do, better, that the others can do better. So as we were hearing from Narada Muni earlier, how he was glorifying the qualities of the demon for being so wrapped in their attention. He was feeling that if only I had that level of wrapped in attention. And this reminded me of sometimes when I would go on books with my husband, Shastrakrit Prabhu, we would sit at the table and we would see so many very wealthy businessmen and very successful, very driven in their occupation, and just so motivated, and so Prabhu would tell me, like, if only I had this kind of motivation for doing my service and for, chanting, and so if I only had that level of motivation, I would be so much more successful in my devotional life. So like that, devotees are always seeking the essence. They're always looking to see how this other person is doing so much, and if only I had that quality, I could do so much more. So like that, and of course, we're seeing how, it's important. Prabhupada is describing towards the end of his report here about the spiritual potency and how Krishna, because he's the controller, he's not under the control of Maya. And so we, on the other hand, we are controlled to some extent, right? By the demands of our senses and our mind. We're controlled by just, having to do things in this world. We're subjugated to the different elements of material energy in the form of disasters. And of course, there's different other personalities that we're subjugated under. So Krishna, he is under the control of his devotees, actually. He's not under the control by force of his own creation. And out of love, Krishna allows himself to come under the control of his pure devotees. And therefore, by service to the pure devotees, if they put in the word for us that, hey, this person, Krishna, please consider this person, they're really trying, please help them, then Krishna listens. Otherwise, it's very difficult, to approach Krishna directly, at least from the point of being a conditioned living entity, very much under the influence of material energy. As we hear in Bhagavad Gita, it is an ocean, and we're like a small little twig in that ocean. We can just, we're just tossed around. So the service to those personalities who are favorably engaged in devotional service and are on that pure platform is very beneficial. Even service to the devotees that are serving those that are on the pure platform is also beneficial, because that's how the disciplic succession works. That's how the mercy flows. As Krishna says, those who say they're my devotees are actually not my devotees, but those who say they're devotees of my devotees, they are actually my devotees. And this is the mode of the spiritual world, to be the servant of the servant of the servant. And that's because by nature we are servants. By nature we're always wanting to do something. And when we act in the mood of serving, there's a deep fulfillment. It's like putting the fish back in the water. I don't know if you've ever seen that. When a fish comes out of the water, what do they do? Yeah, exactly. They're flopping everywhere. So they don't immediately die. So that's how we are. We're like fish out of water. We're flopping around, gasping for some liveliness to give us breath. But no matter what we're given in this world, it's not going to give us that breath that we're looking for. But when we're put back into our element, we can breathe again, we can function, and then everything else makes sense. So like that, doing devotional service in the association of devotees is like going back into our element. And due to our misconception of being this material body, then we encounter difficulties in our services, in our relationships to devotees, because of this one misunderstanding, misidentifying ourselves as something other than the eternal servant of Krishna. So I have very low percentage here, and of course it's already pretty late. I'll stop here. If anybody has any questions, comments, please feel free.
Thank you, Mataji. I don't have any questions, but the comment servant of the servants brings about a reflection that I had in a more sinister spiritual environment before coming to Radha Yatra. I was at the music festival with some friends, and I had the opportunity. I thought it would be good to attend a Native American sweat lodge ceremony. You, many men and women unclothed, go into a hut, and you all share who you pray to and what your deities are, and there's a ceremony, you're in the lodge for over an hour, more or less sweating out, letting out everything you believe in. And I shared that as aspiring devotee to Krishna, my goal was to continue to be a servant of the servants. And from some of the other spiritual energies in that room, that was almost taken as a servant of the servants, I want you to bow to me, to be subject to me. And I experienced some shamanic, even tantric kinds of energies. Felt like they were attacking me, cycling my spiritual energy for being that kind of vulnerable, being that open to want to serve and help others. I don't know, my reflection or takeaway from that is it's a reflection to understand that Maya is very strong and presents itself in very challenging ways, but then also that it's important for us to protect our spiritual energy as devotees and not to allow our association with non-devotees and those who are on more material or even demoniac platforms to let those people in and to keep our distance and to still be a servant of the servants and to help them come back to Godhead, but in a way where they won't take away our ability to be the pure devotees.
And Corey was sharing his experience here about his realization of associating with devotees and not associating with non-devotees. Yes. Yeah, it's very important. Who we reveal our mind to, who we reveal our heart to. I was sharing this the other day with a devotee, and it was in relation to my realization service. And there's this, it's a short clip, but my Prabhu told me about it. And because, sometimes when you're enthusiastic and you're trying very hard to do a service and it just doesn't seem to be working out for you for whatever reason, sometimes it could be the circumstance is maybe not favorable, or the particular skill set you have is maybe not being fully utilized. Of course, there's a lot of discretion that has to come from those that know you and that you trust in terms of the spiritual circle that are senior to you to really figure out what's going on. So my situation was that I was trying a lot to do this, restaurant and give out prasadam books and also hold programs so that people can have a chance to, read together Bhagavad Gita, chant, and take a little prasadam. So that's the basic program Prabhupada gave, which is a very successful program. And the area we were in, and the things we were doing, people were coming, but somehow we weren't able to get enough support financially. So I kept thinking, is it something I'm doing wrong? I'm just not, business minded enough, or, am I missing something? And of course, all those things are probably true. But Prabhu said something to me that really encouraged me. And he gave an example of a famous musician. He performed a big concert. He's a violinist in a big, huge auditorium in New York City. He sold out completely. People paid thousands of dollars. And he got paid like a big amount just to perform a piece. And he did the same thing that day, or maybe the next day. He performed that same piece dressed as a normal person in the subways. And many people were just passing him by. Few people stopped, really appreciated his talent, gave some dollars in the hat, and kept going. And so the idea of the whole experiment was to show that you go where you're appreciated. So like that, I felt like, okay, yes, that's true. Like, what I'm doing and what I'm trying for in terms of devotional service is valid and true and real. It's just not necessarily being appreciated in that circumstance of where I was. So, being in a certain location for preaching purposes and seeing what the people are able to take or not take is also, take some guidance and some thought and some expertise. So yes, our mood is under the direction of Parampara, our teachers are coming from Srila Prabhupada, and from his teacher, they're teaching us. Of course, that is a fast track to develop our spiritual life, is to be compassionate and share with others what we know. And it does take some time to learn how to do that. And some maturity. The more and more we become expert, the more we're able to actually give, even in these situations that would be like normally very unfavorable for our practice. Of course, you see the most extreme example of mercy is our dear Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of, Lord Nityananda Prabhu, who is associate of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He would go into the most unlikely places for devotees. And he would preach there and get people to chant. So like this, it does take an empowered individual. Srila Prabhupada, he so kindly came and amongst so many different individuals was by his potency able to engage them in devotional service. And then they also became empowered. I was, well, I can keep going, but I'll stop there because we got about 2 minutes. If anybody else would like to make a comment or question or anything before we end.
Situations where we're not in association of pure devotees, how important is it for us to say remove ourselves from the situations completely versus kind of playing the part, right? Like this violence guy, he didn't dress up in his tuxedo attire with this big table saying, look at me, I am this famous person. He kind of just played his part of time with some guy on the subway playing my violin. I don't know, it's a juxtaposition I find myself between between us removing ourselves from those kind of situations in the first place, and if we do see ourselves, I want to say tempted or more inclined to be in those situations, is it better to just keep our heads down and play the part and not stick out in a way where we can, I don't know, kind of shy people away from our intentions as devotees.
Yeah, so Corey is asking about, as in the example of the subway and associating what's the measures or like the barometer of what's safe or not in terms of our devotional life towards giving, Krishna consciousness versus avoiding the situations. So the basic premise of our Krishna consciousness is our association. And that's usually majority of what helps us to grow. So yes, we do want to avoid unfavorable situations, but on the positive side, we just try to always seek that association that inspires us. Though to seek association from those individuals that we see as more advanced and try to hear from them, try to serve them. And that way we become more occupied and have more focus on where to put our time and energy versus where not to put it. if we have a tendency towards, those other things, then we make a conscious effort to say no and, focus on the other side, like that. So, yeah, it's pretty simple. So, we just do that, and, your mentor, I know, is Yashadev Prabhu, so, he's pretty amazing. So if you ever have some doubts, you can always ask him and he'll be very straight with you, I'm sure. So, yeah, okay, we'll end here. Grantaraj Bhagavatam ki, Shila Prabhupada ki.